at your piece of paper, fellow Toastmasters, Mr. President, guests, you will see that it says flying high. And that was my intention. I was going to do you a buoyant talk today about flying high. But I've had a really bad 48 hours, an emotionally draining 48 hours, and I just decided I didn't feel like that today, and I'll do that one next time. Instead, I'm going to give you a cautionary tale, and I promise you there has been no collusion between me and Susan. It just so happens that there is a link between what Susan has just told you about and what I'm going to tell you about now. Now, my tale goes back 5 years. My mother has been in a care home for 5 years. She couldn't manage at home any longer, and she decided it wasn't convenient to go and live with one of the children, and so she would go and live in a home. It's been a good move. She was only expected to live a few weeks or months at the most. I still take her out every week. So she's been very happy there, but because she went into the home, we had to sell her house. That proved more difficult than we expected. It was shortly after the crash, and the housing market was flat as a pancake. We were stuck. And then the estate agent told us that someone down the road wanted to buy it, but they couldn't sell their little cottage. So what happened was, we ended up with a house exchange. They bought my mother's house, we bought the little cottage and had some cash to spare. And we put the cash in the bank, and then the rent from the property and the cash in the bank has been paying for my mother's care home fees. So far, so good. For the first couple of years, we had some really good tenants, and because they were good, we looked after the property and we invested in it. We had new carpets and decorating and a better kitchen and all these things. Everything went well, but they decided to move on and buy their own place. Then we had another tenant, and that's when things started to go wrong. The first few months were okay. We got our rent. Come last November, no rent. The agent tried to ring, text, no reply. Then in December, it turns out that he's lost his job, and he pleads with us to give him a couple of months. He is expecting a new job, and then he will pay. So we're not hard-hearted landlords. We said, okay, yes, we'll give you a couple of months to get yourself together, and then you can pay us. February came, no rent. March came, no rent. By April, the agent was getting really twitchy and had desperately tried to contact the guy. He managed to see him, and he explained to the guy just the position he was in, that this wasn't on and he was going to end up out if he didn't start to pay rent. He didn't start to pay rent, nor would he accept the agent's very kind offer to go and help him get housing benefit, which he could have done if he lost his job. So he didn't do anything. He buried his head in the sand, no rent in May. And so we had to go to court for an order, for a possession order for the property. On June the 23rd, yes, the day of the referendum, we got the court's permission to tell him to move by the 8th of July. You can tell by the fact that I'm standing here that by the 8th of July, he was still in the property.
Wow.
What do we do now? Well, actually, as landlords, we can do very little. We have to send in the bailiffs, which will take months, or go back to court and get a different order, which will mean that we can use private bailiffs. It's already been nearly a year with no rent. It's likely to be many more months. We then have to sell the property. It's not a disaster with the money that we got, and there's enough to keep my mother going for a couple of years. So she's not going to be evicted. Is it a disaster for him? I don't know. A year ago, he had a good credit rating and seemed to have his life in order. Now it seems in pieces, possibly with no job, no home, and such a credit rating that he's not going to get another rented property. Tragic. I find it devastating. I wonder how he's got to that place. But the point is this: there are a lot of laws that protect tenants, and rightly so. It's a person's home. We need to protect people's homes. We don't want to evict people. But if you are going into the property business, be aware there are not so many laws that protect landlords. When I first came to Toastmasters, there was a talk on the wonders of going into property and what a good investment it is. And it is a good investment when it goes right, but when it goes wrong, you're really stuck. It's going to be a long time before we get our property back. So this is my cautionary tale to you. Beware, if you're going into property, you need some capital on the side to carry you over until the time you can sell. Thank you.